After the success of Belle de Jour, commercial success of Belle de Jour, Buñuel was free to do whatever he wanted. And he had told me for a long time, since the very beginning we were working together, about an idea to make a film about heresies of our sacred religion, you know, Christianism, from the historical point of view, theological, etc. This idea of being himself an heretic compared to the classical cinema. There is a book in Spain called Los Heterodoxos Españoles, the Spanish heretics, which he liked very much. He gave me to read. And me too, I was extremely interested. I had written already in heresy. But it was very difficult to present a film to a producer. We want to make a film about Christian heresies. And finally, after the success, we wrote that script. Sid Berman gave the authorization to go to Madrid and Spain and Mexico. We wrote the script. And we gave it to read to Sid Berman in Spain, thinking that he would think that we went crazy, you know. But he liked the script. Strangely enough, he laughed, and he said to us, "I will make the film as cheap as possible, you know." And the film is not a very expensive film, but absolutely faithful to the script. And this promenade, you know, this work of two men going from Paris to Santiago de Compostela, to pilgrims, was, you know, allowed us from time to time to go from one side of the theoretical Christianity to the other side to describe an heresy, you know. An heresy is the choice of a personal, private, and strange truth, which is not the official truth from the dogma, but slightly different, you know. And from that difference, as you can see today between the Shiite and the Sunnite, for this difference you can die or kill. You allowed yourself to kill or die. Which is exactly the same for the Christian in the first centuries, you know, of our history, exactly like today between the Shiite and the Sunnite, you know. I heard a Sunnite leader of Daesh a few months ago, saying, but a normal man, I mean, with a beard, if the Shiites refuse to convert themselves to the real religion, we have no other solution than to kill them. Which was exactly the words of Saint Augustine. But the same words, exactly. We are obliged to kill the Manichaeans, you know, the Donatists, who are not thinking the right way. You know, that's a fascinating subject, you know. So, which is eternal. You know, when we made the film, not everybody realized how the film was for all seasons, I would say. You know, today, if you see the film today, it's frightening, because it's exactly what you read in the newspapers. You know, exactly, but in another time, in another period, with other costumes, you know, habits, words. But it's exactly this particular disposition of our mind, of the mind of certain, not yours, not mine, right? Not to accept the ideas, even the fantasies of somebody else. We have to respect the dogma, you know, until the smallest little point, you know. And that's why the film was a commercial success, which is unbelievable. You know, the film was made 200,000 spectators only in Paris, which was unheard of, you know, was such a film. The film was made without any concessions, you know. I'm playing a part in it. I'm playing the Prisciliano. Prisciliano was a Spanish heretic from the 8th century. And just to amuse you, about 3 years ago, I received a letter from Spain from the association called the Friends of Prisciliano, Los Amigos de Prisciliano. And since I had played the part of President in the film, and since President was killed, executed by the dogmatics, they were offering me to be the president of their association, which I immediately accepted, of course. So you are speaking now to the president of the Friends of President. Nobody knows what it is. Before starting to write the Milky Way, I spent alone almost 6 months of research, doing only that, in books, talking with some Jesuits, talking with some Dominicans, and reading a lot, taking a pile of notes like that I still have about all the heresies. I was so good that I gave a lecture in a seminar for of seminarists in Beauvais, or priests, young priests, to tell them about how to make how to classify the heresies, according. And heresy is always born from a mystery. A mystery is, for instance, God is one and three. We have to admit that absurdity, that one is three and three is one. We have to admit that's the dogma. There is one God in three persons. That's all. So you have being a human being, you want to understand, you want to explain. You have a tendency to say, well, there is one God, only one God. From time to time, it takes a different aspect, to the fire. Okay, it's an heresy. Or the opposite. No, in reality, there are three gods, to the fire. That's the principle is to start always. We must accept mystery. If it is mysterious, if it is absurd, that means that it comes from God. The real truth is not from the earth. It's always from another, how could I say, another time and space, another dimension, That's quite interesting about him, because the same attitude could be observed about, for instance, painting. There are the heretics and the classical and so on. Every time there is a dogma, even in the cinema, there was a dogma, the Danish dogma, they are immediately heretics. The idea of two pilgrims walking from from Paris to Santiago, like two pilgrims, that's typically Spanish. That's typically, the Romanesque, the Spanish Romanesque. And that was the real inspiration of not of the meaning of the film, but of the form, yes. And also the idea that at the end of, when we were at the Venice Film Festival where Beldejo won the prize, we went together with Luis to see Godard, I don't know which Godard it was. There was a film by Godard at the Saint Festival. And we went to see the film, and at the end of the film, Buñuel told me, well, if that is the today cinema, then we can make our film about heresies. The freedom of Godard and inspired me in a way. It was not, there was nothing to do with the subject. It was a film about, called La Chinoise, yes, the Chinese girl. Mm-hmm. That was the film with Anna Karina. So indirectly, Godard is the origin of the Milky Way. Godard never speaks about other directors, He's very, I like him very much. I mean, it's a man extremely interesting. But saying, from time to time, he just drops an insult, like to Tarantino in the latest film, Cannes Film Festival. But most of the time he doesn't. I know that he saw some of the Buñuel films several times, that I know. I know also that, for instance, he went to see alone twice Cyrano de Bergerac. I don't know when. Ask him if you want to know why. But we never talk about the qualities of the non-qualities of other directors. Buñuel was extremely interested by Godard, extremely intrigued. he was astonished by the audacity, of Jean-Luc. And that's why going out of the Chinese girl, which is very film, ni queue ni tête, as we say in French, it's about the war in Vietnam and at the same time revolution in Paris, long lines, That's why that new form of film making was really intriguing him. They met several times, but I don't know what they said to each other. They are anyway the two, probably the two most interesting filmmakers I ever met. I think one of the best decisions I made in my life was not to be a director. Because being a director is a nightmare. First of all, you have to spend 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6 years, working on the same story. And I'm much more, attracted by different stories, almost every day. That's my nature. And also, there were many very good directors. My generation, I'm exactly the generation of the new wave. I'm exactly the same age as Truffaut would be. And Godard, we are the two survivors. Godard is 1 year older. Don't tell him I told you, but no, we are very good friends, We work together anyway. So we are the two survivors, and there is nothing more. And that's why at the time when the new wave was rejecting even the idea of being or working with a screenwriter was considered, as something miserable, that we don't need the film, is the film of the director. The screenwriter is nothing. So since on the other side, I was attracted to theater, and I was keeping publishing books, I didn't want to become just, the moment you are a movie director, you have a tag on your shoulder, director, movie director. You can't do anything else. Jean Renoir wrote very good books. He was never considered as a writer, never. You are a movie, you are the chief, you are the king, but you can't do anything else. And if by misfortune 2 or 3 films that you made in a row didn't work, then you are lost. So I prefer to stay a writer, and maybe that's the reason why I'm speaking to you today. We finished the script of the Milky Way in Mexico, January '68. Then I was called by Milos Forman in my way back to Paris, if I could stop in New York to try working with Milos on a new story about the hippies, the hippie movement. So I stopped in New York in March, April, but it was the time of the killing of Martin Luther King, the riots in Harlem. It was very difficult to live in New York at that time and to work. So we decided, Milos had a film selected at the Cannes Film Festival. We decided to go to Paris and to keep working in Paris. You know what happened in May '68. The Cannes Film Festival was cancelled. We went back to Paris, and in Paris, Buñuel was already there, because he was waiting to shoot the Milky Way next summer. So I spent May '68 in Paris with Milos Forman on one side and Buñuel on the other side. The two of them coming from regime, the communist regime in Czechoslovakia and the Franquist in Spain, and seeing what was going on in Paris, they could not understand. None of them, I remember Milos telling me one day, but what do you want? You have everything. What are you looking for? It was impossible to understand why the French students were rioting. I was not a student. They were rioting against a way of living together, about a society of consummation, of consume. That that the word was appearing. In a way, it was early to protest again, you know. But neither Buñuel nor Miloš could understand, you know, from a political point of view. But it was extremely interesting for me to be between the two of them. So finally, at the end of May, Miloš told me that we hadn't finished the script. It's impossible to work in Paris. Let's go to the quietest place in the world. Let's go to Prague. So we went to Prague, and the Russian tanks arrived. So it was the year was crazy, you know. So I went back to Paris, and the film Milky Way was postponed because we had some more work to do, and it was shot in September, I believe, something like September, October. And Miloš left Czechoslovakia forever. Well, not forever now, he's going back now, but for a long period of time. The year 68 was a crazy year completely. Because at the end, everybody forgot that in October 68, 500 students were killed in Mexico by the government to prepare quiet Olympic Games. 500 students. I mean, a government who shoots its youth. How can we understand this? Until today, they found new victims of this October 68 in Mexico. And to Buñuel, it was horrifying, of course. Every film says, you know, about every book, every painting says about the time it was made, of course. And some people saw the Milky Way like a film about theories of writing, of painting. You know, you can be an integrist on painting also, and also an heretic. You know, every time you addict a dogma, you have heretics. You know, that's part of the human nature. That's what Buñuel had felt a long time ago when young, he read this Spanish book I told you about by Menéndez Pelayo. We have to quote his name.